Hello there. Welcome to Gun Cranks Live. I'll be back. Okay, that was terrible. Hey, everybody.
Yes, that was absolutely terrible.
That was my best Arnold Schwarzenegger, okay? Hey, everybody, welcome to Gun Cranks Live. It is Wednesday, 8 p.m., and we're back together having a bit of fun. Let me take my chain off. It smells like an old chain. Anyway, as I said, I'm Guns Magazine editor Brent Weed. I'm joined by American Handgunner editor Tom McHale, and normally our boss, Roy Huntington, is here with us, but Roy's got a honeydew tonight, and his wife told him he wasn't allowed to come out and play and have fun with the boys. So we brought in the illustrious Dr. Will Dabbs. Hey, Will.
Inadequate stand-in. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, but can you tell he was in the aviation branch in the service days, huh?
Does it show? Really?
I picked up on the hint, so.
There you go. Well, tonight we're going to talk about Hollywood. We thought it'd be kind of fun to talk about the good and the bad and the ugly of Hollywood, some of the great movie scenes that have horrible gun handling and just plain craziness. And there's actually a few good ones out there. So I will start with, I remember long ago, cue the mists of time, when I was watching Hawaii Five-0, the original with Steve McGarrett. And I wasn't raised in a shooting family, but even back then as a youngster, I knew you cannot take on a sniper in a tower armed with a telescopic sighted rifle with your chief special and shoot the guy. And he sure did. So
well, maybe let's clarify that. Maybe you can't, but let's not speak for everyone here.
I don't have boots on, and I'm not wearing pants at all. I don't have boots on, so let's not make it too deep.
Well, there is a secret though. There's a secret to making that shot work. So, because we would all agree that's a dramatic moment, right?
Sure.
It's coming up. So here's how it works. The first thing you got to do. And then if it wasn't dramatic enough, go ahead and rack again.
Yeah.
If you're really about to get into some stuff, give it a few racks.
Every 3 or 4 rounds, right? Sure.
So that's how you make the shot. Remember,
exactly.
You do that first.
Well, Will, do you have a number one all-time favorite worst Hollywood or TV gun handling scene?
Well, the good ones would be easier, but kind of following along to your Hawaii Five-0 example. Do you remember the Michael Keaton Batman? We're first introduced to the serious Batman. That's not Biff, Bam. It was a fabulous movie, I thought. But one of the coolest aspects of the movie was the bat plane. And so you get a lot of buildup in the bat plane. It's got miniguns and rockets and all of the Batman, and it's awesome. And he's chewing it. And then when the time comes and he's strafing the Joker pulls out that pistol.
Oh, yeah.
With the extending barrel. And he pulls the thing out, and it's like 4 feet long. It's a revolver. I really have not studied it. It's probably a 1917 45 or something similar. And the bat plane, which would cost $275 million in the real world, he takes down with 1 round out of the extendable revolver he's had in his pants. And I was aggravated from a gun perspective, but not the least of which I really wanted to see more of the bat plane. And it was a little disappointing that he nailed it with a handgun.
That's a good point. And I have to confess, Michael Keaton, when you heard about it, when the movie was coming out, you're like, what? Michael Keaton,
brother.
Batman?
What were they thinking? Sure.
He's kind of a silly guy. And then I thought he was a really good Batman.
He was fabulous. Yeah.
I'm sorry, counterpoint here. The original Batman is the best. How can you diss on the Batusi? And that is on YouTube. I just checked it the other day.
Uh-huh.
One thing that people don't know and they don't realize is a lot of times you still see this, right? And we do our best to teach people that's a really bad way. And in fact, I know one police officer that was killed because of that. He was holding his gun up, went to shoulder a door, and he managed to shoot himself. The reason you see that on TV.
What, holding it straight up? Clarify that so people understand.
I'm sorry. One of these numbers. Typically it's a pistol.
Okay.
The reason they do that is so at that dramatic moment when they zoom in tight on the hero, it's so the gun's in the shot. If they're holding the gun where it should be held, it's not in the shot. So that's one of those things that people don't realize. And if you're familiar with it, remember Charlie's Angels, the original?
Yeah.
They had a poster with Sabrina, Kate Jackson, and she does what we call the full Sabrina, which is she's in silhouette, and sometimes you see an actual photo, and she's holding the gun like right here. That's a half Sabrina. And if you find the picture where she's actually got her finger on the trigger, holding it next to her face, that's considered a full Sabrina.
The full Sabrina. I see. Mm-hmm.
Oh man, I remember that show. Showing the age.
Whoa. Back up. You do or don't?
I do.
Oh, okay, good.
Yeah, no, I'm confessing I'm that old. So
yeah, well, we're about the age we all are that I went through puberty with that show.
He said, wistfully.
Let's just pause there for a moment.
It's a good thing we're on a 5-second delay. That's all I have to say.
There's some folks who probably wish we're on a 2-hour delay, but
yeah,
you know, you get what you pay for, folks. You get what you pay for. So, Tom, your favorite scene in cinema?
I got to go general. I mean, there's just so many things. You know, the teacup. You know, the cup and saucer routine. That's where's that not? You know, we're going to get to this in a couple minutes, the good examples, but right, kind of everywhere. You know, the shooting from the hip. The one that kills me though is the multiple attackers, because the hero is so fast.
Yeah,
you know, he got 3 guns drawn on him, and he kind of whips it out and like before anybody can even move. So
yeah,
I love those.
The Steven Seagal thing where, you know, he's beating guys with pool cues and ashtrays, and then he pauses and shoots 3 or 4 of them. And then, you know, and of course that always leads into the 97 shot, you know, single action revolver, but that's a whole nother thing too.
And the striker fired handgun that has to be cocked every time that you you present it from your holster. It makes a little clicky cocking sound, whether it's a Glock or SIG or whatever.
No,
Exactly.
that's because they have a deal going with the ammunition industry. So they're contractually bound to eject a perfectly good round at the beginning of every fight scene, you know, onto the street. So
I've got one. Name this movie.
Okay.
Danny Glover, Lethal Weapon. He's got a car speeding at him, but of course we can take a few minutes to work the crick out of our neck.
Well, it's all about accuracy, you know, proper stance.
I had a car.
Beretta 92, man. I wanted to beat Martin Riggs when I grew up.
I had a car speeding me one time, and I jumped and ran and screamed like a little girl. That's what you're supposed to do.
Twisting your head around was not primary on your list, huh?
If my neck's that cricked up, maybe I ought to be down at the hospital or seeing the chiropractor.
That was a fantastic gun movie, though. I mean, that was our introduction to the Beretta 92. Mm-hmm. And it's painful for me to admit this. I traded a 357 Desert Eagle even for a Beretta 92. I needed one so badly after I saw that movie.
Nice.
You know, these are on, right? You don't necessarily want to admit that in public.
Hey, that Beretta 92 was my first carry gun by choice.
Mm-hmm.
Full size. Yep.
You and your predecessor, Mike Humphreys, you guys are Beretta 92 fans.
I love them. I got a couple floating around here still. So,
yeah. Well, they work as long.
I went to that much trouble to buy one, though. I still was not any cooler than I was to begin with.
Really?
The long walks or none of that.
Well, my favorite gun from all those movies was the nail gun. Remember that? Was that Lethal Weapon 2?
Yep.
Where he takes the I can't think of the name brand, the nail gun, and nails the guy.
Oh yeah.
We had some cool nail gun action in Casino Royale as well.
Never saw it.
That was the scene in, where was it, Venice or something? Where it's in that building under construction shooting nail guns at people
Brent,
while they're
you
falling.
Not seen that?
What's that?
Did Brent say he had not seen Casino Royale?
I have a dirty secret that my family abuses me continually. I quit watching movies and TV and radio and all that about 1985. So I've literally seen Blazing Saddles and Caddyshack and Blues Brothers hundreds and hundreds of times. But if you named a movie today, I guarantee I haven't seen it, and I wouldn't know anything about it.
I Want to Be You. Wow, that's cool. We actually excised television from our home in 1996, but I've watched movies ever since.
Yeah. Well, it's
so you missed out on Walking Dead then.
I have gone back recently after the kids are gone, and I've watched a couple of them. But yeah, I never would have had time to write if I'd watched TV.
Did you happen to catch the farm scene? They're all living at this farm with an old farmer named Herschel. He was a vet, and the make a long story short, the farm was overrun by 10 or 20,000 zombies, and Herschel goes running out to protect his farm with a pump action shotgun, and he fired that thing 93 times without a reload.
Mm-hmm.
He was using shorty rounds.
Is that what it was?
Yeah.
Okay. So, well, that makes sense then. So
that explains everything.
Well, we've talked about really bad gun handling and bad guns in the movies, but let's go the other direction. There are a few good gun handling scenes and good, solid weapons in some of the movies. I know, for example, Tom Selleck, he's a multiple graduate of Gunsight Academy. He's the one that comes to mind, but there's lots of guys. So I'll throw it to you, Will. What is probably your best, coolest, good gun handling scene that you can think of?
I hate to go for the low hanging fruit, but it's got to be Heat. And they got some proper gunmen to train the actors into how to manage their weapons, and they don't sweep their muzzles. They do magazine changes at the right time. One of the coolest aspects of Heat, though, is the soundtrack. And they went and got that reverb from firing automatic weapons in a built-up area.
That's not the one I was going for. I've got one, but Tom, I'll be interested to see what you think.
Well, maybe I'm going to steal yours then. I've got two, so I'm going to see if I can steal one of yours. I think you got to go to John Wick.
Certainly.
With Keanu Surfer Dude. Now, in fairness to him, he took it seriously. I think, who was it? Taron Butler, I think, trained him.
Yeah.
I've seen the YouTube videos. That guy's
many weeks. You'll see stuff like actual sensible reloads and behind cover and decent grip and actual shooting techniques. That was some good stuff there.
Yeah. You had two.
Oh, you want the second one? Sure. You know who else I like? And it goes back to a book. Have you ever read any of Stephen Hunter's books?
Mm-hmm.
Shooter. Yeah. He was the guy who did Shooter, and he's written 15 books or so, and he's a gun guy. And so they're all really pretty darn good on the gun thing. And they made a movie out of Shooter. I think it was Mark Wahlberg. And I wasn't there, but I'm guessing Stephen Hunter was on set going, no, we're going to do this somewhat properly, because they're talking about, milliradians. And I think they even mentioned Coriolis effect on long distance shots at one point. Like, when have you ever heard that in a Hollywood movie, right?
Wow. Well, just as you were sitting there talking, what occurred to me, I don't watch movies a lot, but I do tend to watch, war movies, and there's been a lot of good ones, Hurt Locker and some of those, that genre that our current Middle East conflict. And honestly, when I stop and think about it, you can tell that there's a lot of former guys that are the technical advisors, because really, come to think of it, most of the gun handling and the tactics are pretty spot on. That's pretty amazing when you stop and think about it. It just occurred to me.
Hey, speaking of, did either of you guys ever see, and I'm going to draw a blank on it was a Navy SEALs movie, but it was the entire cast, except for literally one or two people, were active duty folks in the movie. And it previewed at a SHOT Show, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years ago.
Right.
And they showed it, screened it there.
Was that it?
Well, I didn't prep for this one, so I can't remember the title.
I didn't either.
It wasn't Navy SEALs with Charlie Sheen. It was it was a legit one. But the interesting thing about it, and why I bring it up, obviously the gun handling was spot on. But in some of the scenes, a number of the scenes, they were live fire. Like, there was one scene where the the riverboats go screaming upstream to do an extraction of these guys. And they had the actual boats, the actual crews, actual miniguns firing actual ammunition. And you see footage of them just like clearing vegetation by the square mile along the shoreline. And it was fantastic. So can't get more real than that. So.
I wish I could remember the title. It may have been Uncommon Valor.
That's what it was, Uncommon Valor.
I was going to say.
The story was a little over the top, but the technical stuff was good.
The two leads were actual former active duty Navy SEALs. And so you got past the stilted dialogue in about 45 seconds, and you kind of bought into it.
Yeah.
And there was still some cheese in that movie. There was one scene where a sniper takes out this narco terrorist, and the SEALs are in the water and they catch him.
Yeah.
and that was perhaps flirting with,
right? And lowered him into
was
water.
hard. That took some suspension of disbelief.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a fabulous movie.
It was good. Well, and it's funny. The most of the scenarios were real. They were factual things. What they did was they pulled a whole bunch of missions, that had actually happened in various parts of the world over 10 or 15 years, and they put them into one movie. So the movie itself was a little over the top, but each of the segments was somewhat based on something real that happened. Maybe not the sniper, the the headshot guy being eased into the river, but
yeah,
it still was dynamic and cool.
Yeah. Fun
now,
movie.
I'm sure we're going to get comments here. I've not been checking them, but we got to go Old West now. That of course was responsible for that genre was probably responsible for some of the worst big screen gun handling. The 44 shot. Single action, but there's actually some, especially of late, that have been good. I do watch Tombstone a lot. That one, especially when I go to Arizona, I got to watch Tombstone at least once. And the weapons there are very accurate. Most of the gun handling is pretty good. I thought that one certainly deserves. I'm trying to think. I had another one, and I've just completely drawn a blank now because
it's the movie where Gene Hackman was kind of like running this town, but he was a professional gunman. Fast draw kind of guy. And
because it all blows up in the end.
Stepson or something followed in his footsteps, and they shot it out in the end.
Yep.
And there was actually a little bit of semi-realism there. I won't say which one, but a guy got shot, and he didn't just put his hand on his chest and drop dead instantly. He kind of fell down and complained about it for 5 minutes, and eventually succumbed.
The one with Christian Bale, was it 3:10 to Yuma? I think was not just a fantastic movie. It was well done, but having seen my share of gunshot wounds, they did that right. It wasn't you get hit and you fly back 37 feet and then you're dead immediately. That's not the way it rolls. And it's just gross. They would not just shoot him and be done. They'd shoot him several times and he'd try to get up, and they do it again. And the 1851 Colt Navy had about the same downrange spunk of a 380 ACP. So it took a little effort to actually turn somebody off back then with those primitive tools. The 310 to Yuma was good, and then Unforgiven was also had some good gun stuff in it.
Yep. I was sitting here, and now it's all starting to flood forward. Is Lonesome Dove, the scene where what was that? Was it Augustus McCrae gets his horse shot? Or I'm mixing my stories here. I think it was Robert Duvall got his horse shot out from under him, so he's laying behind it, and the bad guys are saying, you can't hit anybody from here. And the one guy starts doing the chicken dance and clucking like a chicken, and so he kind of gets a couple ranging shots and then drops him like a bad habit. I loved that scene.
Well, and an honorable mention has got to go to Quigley Down Under, which is completely unrealistic, but it's so cool it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And the fact that he can shoot somebody in another hemisphere with that big long rifle, I don't care that he can't do that. I fell for it completely.
Yeah.
Yep.
It was completely worthwhile.
Actually, Tom, didn't I just send you the email, or maybe it was Roy? And I don't know who brought it up, but I responded with that quote, my favorite quote from the end of the movie. I said I didn't have much use for one. I didn't say I didn't know how to use it.
Yeah. Was that a Quigley quote?
Yeah.
Okay. Yep. That's a good line.
Exactly. Okay, with our remaining time here, put you guys on the spot. You have to pick number one, either the worst gun handling in the world, the best gun handling in the world, or just everything was so cool. You always remember that when you're standing on the range getting ready to shoot. So, Dr. Dabbs.
Once again, I hate to go for low-hanging fruit, but I'm a heat man. No, wait. It's all right, Predator. And the details I don't have time to go into it, but I nearly sacrificed my military career to see the movie Predator in the theater. And when Jesse the Body Ventura unlimbers that M134 from the hip, I don't care if it's realistic. It doesn't matter. I was transported to a different plane right then.
Yeah.
And so forget heat. It was Jesse the Body Ventura with his minigun.
It's a good one. Tom McHale.
I got to go Bond, and not for realistic, but for ridiculous, but just downright entertaining. And there's two. There's the first one, I believe it was Dr. No, where where Boothroyd issued him his the movie version issued him his Walther PPK.
Yeah.
He said I think at the time it was actually 32, and he said, "Get rid of the Beretta 25. This has delivery like a brick through a plate glass window."
Uh-huh.
so that was one. And you know what? The other one that's one of my favorite ridiculous Bonds is Man with the Golden Gun. Pretty much the whole movie. But
Yeah.
But the best scene is at the end where they both have one. Well, the Man with the Golden Gun only has one shot, but Bond has wasted all but one bullet, and he's standing there imitating the wax figure that was in the guy's training room, just holding real still. Just slowly turns and takes him out.
Well,
realistic stuff there.
Yeah.
Brent,
I have to say, go ahead.
No, I just wanted to plant the seed in your brain. Don't end us until we talk to Will about his movie guns that he's built.
Good
so
point.
Hold that thought. Now go on. Sorry.
Yeah. You know, if we actually planned this out before we went live, it might be a lot better. We don't. I was just going to say, yeah, exactly. We're the gun cranks. We get together and talk about stuff. And I think it's fun. No, my favorite movie scene, and there's individual arms action, but there's also large scale, is the scene where in Apocalypse Now, where they're storming the beach town so Colonel Kilgore can go surfing.
Yeah.
I remember it plain as day. The first time I saw those Hueys coming in low over the surf, that is just one of the best military cinematography moments ever. And then they actually do some pretty good gun handling and shooting. You don't see guys just unloading guns endlessly. You see guys reloading. And of course, there's R. Lee Ermey in there. So you get Robert Duvall and R. Lee Ermey and lots of gunfire and, the crazy colonel. It's just that to me, I've watched that scene over and over and over. And, in real life, you sure wouldn't want to be there, but to see it on the silver screen is just incredible.
You know what? That brings up an excellent question for our guest. When you were over in the desert riding around on choppers, can we assume that you mounted large speakers and played Flight of the Valkyries as you were tooling around?
Well, actually, one of the aircraft that we had, one of the flight engineers had taken a boombox and wired it into the ICS, into the intercom. And so, at the time that I was flying, it was Top Gun and that era, but we rocked a Led Zeppelin at 3 feet off the ground and 170 knots all the time.
That's cool.
Somehow it just works, right?
Oh yeah. Just to give you some insights as to why I have so few normal friends, that scene in Apocalypse Now, R. Lee Ermey was one of the helicopter pilots. Robert Duvall was Colonel Kilgore, and he was either the second or third choice for that part. It was supposed to be Steve McQueen. And, they offered Steve McQueen $2 million to go to Thailand and film that scene, which would have taken between 1 and 2 weeks, and he just didn't want to do it. He didn't want to leave the country.
Wow.
It was filmed in Thailand, so they had M16A1s with 30-round magazines. And during the course of the Vietnam War, they had about 1,000 30-round magazines in theater. So, and they all went to aviators and special forces guys. So the vast majority of the magazines would have been 20-rounders. But once again, what normal people would notice or care?
Yeah.
But yeah, that was pretty life-changing.
That was a good point. I never paid any attention to that. I was busy watching everything else, but I didn't look at the mag. So my hat's off to Dr. Dabbs and his eye for detail.
With no,
there you go.
Yeah.
Speaking of eye for detail, can we talk about the DIY guns book that just came out? I'm asking permission from the host so he doesn't.
Oh, absolutely.
Because he does that when he doesn't get his way. He hits that mute button, and
I have not hit the mute button.
So for those that nice.
Okay, it's off the rail. See, this is what happens when Roy doesn't show up and exert like an adult influence.
Mm-hmm.
The kids are all together having fun and things are off the rails. So, Tom, DIY, please.
Okay, DIY gunsmithing. Brand new book just came out, available on Amazon.com, and full color interior, black and white interior if you want to save a few bucks, and ebook, Kindle, iPad if you're an electronic kind of person. But the reason we're bringing it up is our Dr. Will here has got, how many pieces did you write in that thing? You got kind of a shop going out where you live. You probably did a
I
half
haven't
dozen
seen it
articles in there.
yet. I know it was fun, but I'm not sure how many are in. Mine hadn't shown up yet.
Oh, well, we got to fix that, man. Literally, they're hot off the press, like right now. So, but one of them, which I thought was kind of a signature piece, was a movie gun. Now, I'm sure several have been used in movies, but this was only a movie gun. And I'm talking about the Star Wars blaster. So I'm going to turn it over to you for the
This
details.
one, maybe. All right, so Blastech E11. And, you know, I saw Star Wars in 1977. I was 11 years old. And it's what all the kids on the playground were talking about. And all I heard was that there was a science fiction movie that had spaceships, and the bad guy was a big black guy in a spacesuit. So I had this mental image of Kareem Abdul-Jabbar in a Neil Armstrong bubble-headed spacesuit. And then I went to see the movie. I sat on the front row in Brookhaven, Mississippi, and it changed my life. If you go to that crummy little theater now, it's probably still got a big drool stain on the front where I sat there and watched that movie. But I'd always wanted a Blastech E11 blaster. And so I have my own 0702 manufacturer's license. So this started out as a semi-auto Wiselight Sterling, and I converted it to full auto, which is an adventure in and of itself, but it's all done legally. The cooling fins are made out of aluminum stock that came from Home Depot. I took the same stuff, turned it upside down, and ran it along the top of the gun and linked it into the cooling holes up here in the front and the rear sight. Used that as a scope mount. I was hoping that I would have this before we had the conversation, but this is just a cheap red dot. The sights on the original blasters were made from a Sherman tank scope called an M47. And
Really? The movie prop version.
Used to, they were dirt cheap. You find them anywhere, but when people started trying to make these, you can't find an M47 anywhere. And I found one on Gunbroker, and nobody else knew what it was. And it was sort of like that biblical story where, you know, you find the treasure in the field and you do whatever it takes to buy the field. Well, I was going to come away with that M47 scope, no matter what it cost, if I had to hock a kidney or whatever. And once again, I realized that normal people don't care. But in a week, this is going to be gone, and it's going to have an original 1943 era M47 Sherman scope. It's going to be perfect then. Sterling will actually feed from either a Sterling or a Sten magazine.
Yeah.
I was unwilling to cut one of those beautiful Sterling magazines down to make a little short stubby mag. So I made this out of a Sten. It holds 5 or 6 rounds, I think, but it functions fine. But this thing cycles at 750 rounds a minute, and it'll cure what ails you, man. So
will it penetrate Imperial Stormtrooper armor?
You know, I've not studied penetration. I do know that it shoots a lot straighter than the ones that consider these blast points. Only Imperial troops are so precise. Really? You can't hit anything. Yeah. You couldn't hit the ground.
But the cool part of this gun is that the story itself, okay, so the full auto part, anybody can do it, but it takes some time and money and all that, right? But
it's an enormous pain. But yeah, it can be done legally, but it's hard.
But the cosmetics, the way you came up with that stuff, it is very doable and achievable in a. You don't need a professional machine shop to do this stuff. That's what's so cool about the DIY Guns magazine is it's approachable stuff for us regular guys.
Yeah, you know, the host gun could be made from a number of different sources. I made a semi-auto Mark II S Sten, what looks like a suppressed Sten gun, and I made that essentially with a Dremel tool, but it's semi-auto. But you can still find those old semi-auto Sterlings. Yeah, if you look for them, they're spendy now. The demilled Sterling parts kits are fairly cheap, and but all the window dressing, all the cool guy stuff here. I cut the pieces with a table saw and a cutoff wheel, and then I shaped it all with a Dremel tool. You could do much to most of this conversion with the Dremel tool. There's not much to it. And this is bake-on engine block paint that I cooked in my workshop. It doesn't take a machine shop to make yourself a blaster.
I mean, and it's like a dead ringer for what you see in the movie. That's what's so cool. Well, when you get that new sight, you know?
Well, I can tell you the voice of experience. If you want friends, show up at your local firing range with a selective fire E11 Star Wars blaster, and you'll have all the buddies you can stand.
No
They'll even
doubt.
supply the ammo, I bet, right?
Oh yeah.
So Will, do you have the M41 Pulse Rifle or whatever it's called? We just you just wrote a Shooter's RX piece. I think it might have published, but I can't remember. But there it is.
To quote my favorite movie in the entire world, let me introduce you to a personal friend of mine. This is the M41A Pulse Rifle with an over and under 30 millimeter pump action grenade launcher. Fires a 10 millimeter high explosive light armor piercing round. So yeah, this is my M41 Pulse Rifle.
You got 36 shots left in that guy.
I do. It starts with 99, and I just picked 36 because it seemed like it had been in action. And I've actually, this weapon is my favorite gun of all time. If I could trade my gun collection for a single firearm, it would be one of the originals. They had two or three that were original firing guns. They only had one that had an operational grenade launcher. But the heart of the gun was originally going to be an MP5, and they found that the MP5 didn't have sufficient muzzle flash, and so it's built around an M1A1 Thompson, like this one. You can see where it comes from. The receiver and such is a standard M1A1 Thompson.
Yep.
They were made by Bapty in England, so the weapons were all available in England. The window dressing up here in the front is taken from a Spaz 12, like this one. So you can see where the cool guy stuff comes from, but they just took the heat shield and handguard and such off of a Spaz 12. And then the grenade launcher is a cut down Remington 870.
Okay.
It's chopped to about nothing because if I remember correctly, it would only hold with one in the, I think the magazine only holds 2 rounds. But this is actually made from 3 different guns. And so this was a homeschool project that my kids and I built together. This is the only expensive piece here is the fire control set from an original M1A1. And you could find those dirt cheap for years, but they're hard to find now. I actually found one on Gunbroker that came with the stock and such, and I binned the rest of it. The rest of this is a piece of square steel tubing that came from Home Depot. This stuff came off an airsoft gun. So I ordered that from Amazon for $13 and threw the rest of it away, but it gave me the stuff I needed for the airsoft gun. The rest of it's 2x4s. So if
2x4s.
if compared to fabricate this bit down here, legit, you could make this for $20. It just all it takes is a little time and a little patience and some little window dressing and some paint. But it didn't cost anything to make this. It's a great project for me and my boys.
And so, I don't think we said what movie that was from.
Oh, it's from Aliens. You know,
the original, right?
Well, it was.
Or was it an album?
You know, Alien was Ridley Scott, and it was a good horror movie. And then Aliens was James Cameron, and that it was Stan Winston did the creature effects. He was at the top of his game. We've all of us who are in this silly little world have opportunities missed, but my wife, then my girlfriend, spent a summer in London when I was off saving the world as a soldier. And she sent me a clipping that came out of the newspaper. It was right after Aliens had debuted and before Al Gore had been in the internet. And so they just wanted to get rid of the props. And they sold all the uniforms from Aliens at auction. And they went for less than $100 a piece.
Really?
The body armor from the Colonial Marines. And the way they advertised it is they put one guy in a Colonial Marine uniform and they put another guy in the spacesuit that was used in the opening scene where they discover Ripley in cryostasis.
Yeah.
And they had a sandwich sign and they were walking down the streets of London and it said, show up at this time to buy this junk. Because back then nobody cared about movie stuff.
Right.
And,
right.
I was in the Museum of Modern Culture in Seattle, and I forget who it was, one of the Microsoft guys who's richer than the government, but he has a weakness for stuff like this. And he's got one of the original resin props from the movie, and he's got Hicks body armor, which is worth Lord knows what now in the days of the internet where you can go and reach people who care about stuff like that. But my wife said she would have bought me one if that the sale detonated maybe 3 weeks before she got there. And
Yeah.
I came this close to having one set of body armor from my favorite movie in the whole wide world. Really close. Now, I do have one actual original screen used movie gun. Guys, you want to talk any more about that before we move on?
I hate to say we're running up against our time here, so I'm going to have to shut this down. We could do this for a long time, but I will also mention people.
You're mean.
Somebody's got to be the dad.
Dang.
In case you were wondering, you weren't freaking out. We had Will put the virtual background up, and obviously it didn't go so well when he was demonstrating his toys. So while I'm closing up here, Will, if you want to shut off your screen and then maybe hold those guns up, because they're beautiful, incredible pieces of craftsmanship, but all we could see was all kinds of weird psycho effects from doing that. So while Will is doing that, I would just like to say we appreciate you joining us for Gun Cranks Live. We're here every Wednesday at 8 p.m. If you want to reach out to us, and lots of you have, you can contact us. I'm editor at gunsmagazine.com, and Tom is editor at AmericanHandgunner.com. And of course, we'll always be happy to send stuff along to Dr. Will Dabbs, who I would like to say is our best writer, and we appreciate him more than American Handgunner does. So I'm just throwing that out there a little bit. But
it cost me.
Who just did the DIY, Brent? Dang.
It was my idea.
Oh, okay.
No, we're a little competitive about our magazines. There's Will's blaster.
Oh, we got a white background. Perfect.
Yeah, that is outstanding. So most macho cool. There you go.
M41 Pulse Rifle.
Well, very cool. Well, like I said, thanks for joining us, everybody. Make sure you tell all your friends, even the liberals, and we'll meet here again next Wednesday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern time, and we'll talk about some more wild, crazy, and wacky stuff. So on behalf of Will Dabbs and Tom McHale, I'm Brent Wheat. Now, you have a good night, and we'll see you on the shooting range. Bye-bye, everybody.